Can you think of any priests that have not either been discussed or identified that have actually, well, let me put it this way. Can you name for me the priests that actually have been reported by the Archdiocese, either you or somebody at your direction, to law enforcement for suspicions of sexual abuse under the Mandatory Reporting Act?
You're talking about since he became Archbishop?
Yes.
The case of the one case under my tenure was the case of Curtis Wehmeyer, and we reported that immediately.
You say we. Who is we?
Well, it would have, the information came in to the civil chancellor, and the civil chancellor notified another person on our staff, Father McDonough, who was at the time the delegate for Safe Environment. And he also informed me that Father McDonough and this Deacon Vomastic were being sent over to tell Father Wehmeyer at the time to leave the premises and to take a leave of absence.
When did Jennifer Hesselberger first bring to your attention that she believed that Wehmeyer posed a risk of harm to the children in the Archdiocese if he was allowed to continue in ministry?
Well, again, you're assuming facts, not an evidence. If that's a statement, I don't know. If the Archbishop can answer whether that came to his attention, listening to what he asked you, that's fine.
Jennifer prepared a memo for me prior to the time that I had made him pastor of Blessed Sacrament of St. Thomas the Apostle, pointing out that 5 years previously he had...
The question was when now? When did she bring this risk to your attention?
You're answering, and that's fine, Archbishop. Counsel, he can answer your question.
No, I asked a question of when now. I'm just trying to get the anchor for the date here, Archbishop.
And he's providing that.
I can't tell you the month and the date, but I think it was in 2008, prior to my making him pastor. He was already parochial administrator of Blessed Sacrament. And we were talking...
So let's just get the when. So we're talking about the right time frame here. You're saying it's sometime in 2008, right?
Correct.
And you're saying that it was when Wehmeyer was at what parish?
He was parochial administrator of Blessed Sacrament in St. Paul.
And are you able to identify the month in 2008?
It was shortly after I had become Archbishop. I became Archbishop on the 2nd of May, so I believe it would have been in the month of June.
And at that time, what did you learn about Wehmeyer's fitness as a priest to continue in ministry and the risk that may be posed by it?
The information that Jennifer brought to my attention was that Father Wehmeyer had a same-sex attraction, that he had approached two young men in their mid-20s at a bookstore of some sort and made an advance on them. That was reported to I think that was 5 years previously. That was reported to the Chancery, and Father Wehmeyer was sent off to a rehabilitation program, a clinic and came back and had a, it would confirm the fact that he was same-sex attracted, and he was put on the monitoring program. He was to do therapy once a month and spiritual direction once a month. And I obviously didn't see him being same-sex attracted as an indication that he had any interest sexually in young children, or that he was a pedophile. I had no reason to believe that he was, and I believe that he was fit at that time to take on these two parishes.
There's some indication that in February of 2009, Rourke was his monitor. Do you have a recollection of that?
I think that would be true.
And that you signed on to a monitoring plan at that time. Do you recall that?
That I signed on? Could you explain that?
Did you sign on to monitoring plans?
For whom, please?
Each of the priests that were being monitored for sexual abuse.
That program was already in place when I became Archbishop.
But in 2009, in order for somebody to go on monitoring, didn't it require you, or as a matter of practice and protocol, to approve that?
Yes, that would happen. That would be true.
And when did you place, then, Wayminer on the monitoring program?
I believe, and I could be wrong on that, I believe that he was on the monitoring program based on that previous incident.
Yeah, I'm looking at some records, and I think that's correct. It looks like he had been on monitoring for 40 years as of 2009. Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Okay. Did you become aware, at least in 2009, then, that he had been in monitoring for misconduct in 2004 and in 2006 for seeking out sexual encounters with 19-year-olds?
I didn't know about that second incident. I did know about the first incident, which happened, I think, in 2004 in a bookstore somewhere.
And I don't think, Counsel, your words of 18, 19, I don't know that that's what the Archbishop testified to. You can ask him that. Again, you've inserted your own facts. If the Archbishop
I'm asking
knows
if he knew.
that. Well, how is he? Well, he's answered he knew, but you have your little soundbite. It's completely inappropriate, yet again, that you insert your facts or what you want to be the facts for whatever reasons. Let's get to what the truth is and ask the questions that the Archbishop can provide you. Try to get to the truth and not made up facts.
That little speech doesn't count on our time. And look at the documents.
You ask him, and then you can answer. He can answer. If that's what it is, then fine, but don't just say things. Ask him to answer those.
In April of 2009, I think you just said that, well, let me put it this way. In 2009, did you believe that Waymire was fit to continue in ministry without informing any of the parishioners and the public that he was on the monitoring program?
At that time, we didn't, I don't believe that we had informed the trustees that he was on the monitoring program.
And you didn't inform anybody other than those in the official position of the Archdiocese? So that would be your chancellors, the vicar general, yourself, and the monitors, correct?
At the time, I don't believe so. If that were to happen today, we would disclose to the trustees.
We're talking about 2009 now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Correct.
In April of 2009, to recall receiving information from Hasselberger about concerns about a change in Waymeyer's status from being the business administrator to being the pastor?
Well, that would have happened, I think, in 2008, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but she raised concern in 2009 to you, is my question. Do you remember, you made that decision in 2008?
I thought I had, but
Okay.
could have been 2009.
Okay. Let's assume then that you made the decision in 2008. Do you recall Hasselberger bringing the concern to you about why that was done?
She brought the concern to me that about the incident that I told you about in the bookstore, and that he was same-sex attracted.
And she also raised with you the concerns about the St. Luke's findings that had been made and in the file, correct?
She may have. I don't recall that.
You recall that he had been diagnosed with having sexual compulsion or sexual addiction and unable to control his sexuality?
No, I don't remember that at all.
Did you read the St. Luke's report?
I believe I did, yes.
When?
At that time, before I made him pastor.
When you made him pastor and changed his status from business administrator to pastor, did you know that he was a risk of harm?
I did not know. I
He
would
was?
not have made him pastor if I had known.
He proved to be, didn't he?
Unfortunately,
Did Father Laird warn you against making him pastor?
he did.
And he told you that there are questions about his fitness to be in ministry, much less to be a pastor, didn't he?
He thought he was somewhat unstable.
And in April, was that a yes?
That's what he told me. He said he had an unstable personality. But Father Laird clearly didn't like Father Waymeyer, and there was, I think, a bias there.
So you thought it was a personality conflict between Laird and Waymeyer?
I thought to a certain extent, yes.
And so you didn't think about the fact that Laird was speaking for the safety of the potential children where he was serving as pastor?
Well, there was no indication that he had interest in sexually abusing children. There was no indication at all.
When you read the St. Luke's report and received the other information you've described, at the time you made him pastor and continued him in ministry, did you tell anybody at the parish what you knew about his history as reported in St. Luke's, as raised by Father Laird, or as raised by Jennifer Hasselberger?
At the time, I believed that that was the responsibility of Father McDonough. I found out subsequently that he did not inform the trustees, but normally in those situations at that time, we would have informed the trustees of the parish.
So when did you learn that McDonough had not done what?
I think it was in the last week of September
Of what year?
of 2013.
Did anyone ever tell you, or did you ever learn from review of the file, that Curtis Waymeyer had been restricted from working with youth in 2004?
No.
Have you ever heard that before I made that assertion today?
I have not.
Did you learn that Curtis Waymeyer had gotten a DUI in 2009?
I did.
How?
It was reported to us. It was after I had made him pastor, and it was reported to us, I think, through Father McDonough.
And did you also learn that as a part of that arrest relating to the DUI, he had been trying to solicit some young people to party with him?
I don't recall that as part of the DUI.
What do you recall as a part of the DUI and what you were told or learned?
I learned that he was on a camping trip and that he went into a kind of a 7-Eleven type place, and they noticed that he was unstable in his walk, and someone called the police, and they came and stopped him from driving and gave him the citation.
Were you aware that when he was arrested for the DUI, that he called Joe Keppers as his criminal lawyer?
I was not aware of that. I knew that he was friendly with the Kippers, so it doesn't surprise me.
Were you aware that at the time of that he was still on monitoring?
I was aware of that, yes.
Did you ever see the report or get informed by any of your any of your officials that the report says that he was trying to pick up teenagers to go back to the campground to party?
No, sir.
Having heard that, is that the first time you've heard that?
I believe so, yes. I didn't know that.
Does that alarm you?
It does.
And would it have alarmed you if you had been told that back then?
Certainly would have, yes.
You did know he was on monitoring. You did know
No,
he
I
had
didn't know he was on monitoring.
I said you
Okay,
did.
okay.
You did know that. You did know about the other things. At that time, after the DWI, did you call Curtis Waymeyer in and say, "I need to get to the bottom of this," and ask him if he had been engaging in inappropriate sexual contact of any kind with anybody?
During that time period, I called him in 4 times from reports that I had gotten in the parish about his anger mismanagement, I would say. But I didn't have the knowledge at that time to question him on his and any sexual activity.
Well, you knew about the St. Luke's report. He was a sexual addict. You knew that.
But we hadn't had any. But that had been 5 years before, and he had been in therapy, and he had been in spiritual direction, and St. Luke's report indicated that he was fit to go back into ministry.
Well, if you had reason to call him in 4 different times to ask him about certain things not pertaining to his sexuality, why didn't you ask him about his sexual conduct or possible misconduct? Didn't you want to know?
Well, those were not things that had been reported to me. There was nothing of a sexual nature that had been reported to me except for the St. Luke's remarks and the report of the 2004 incident.
But sometimes the way you get information, Archbishop, is to ask. And why didn't you ask him?
Because there was no reason to.
The St. Luke's report gave you reason, didn't it?
It did, but that had already been a matter of at least a year, and that I had received that report. No, that would have been in 2004. I'm getting confused here. And I had to deal with the situation of what was current in his administration, and that happened to be the question of his getting along with staff, his anger mismanagement. Those were the topics that were on the table.
Serba was urging you to not continue him in ministry because of his sexual issues, wasn't he?
I don't believe that.
Well, then what was Serba concerned about as expressed to you? It was the sexual issues, wasn't it?
No, Serba never expressed any sexual concerns to me.
What was the basis for him being concerned about his unfitness to be and continue in ministry, if not sexual?
Are you talking about Serba?
Laird, I mean, excuse me.
Okay. He never mentioned anything to me about his whole sexual nature. His concern primarily, as I recall it, was that he said he didn't think he had a stable personality.
Did you ever tell anybody to get the 2009 police report that reflects what I just told you about him and the teenagers?
I did not. I wasn't. I was aware of the arrest, but I wasn't aware of the other incident that you just alluded to.
Did you tell anyone to get the 2009 report?
No, I don't believe so.
You knew there was a police report.
Sure, would have known there was a police report.